Welcome back to our reading lessons for this week. It is our second lesson this week, so I don't need to tell you anymore, Year 4, what is our target? You can shout it out at me, please. Go for it. Yes, it's fluency. I want to see you really practicing reading out loud with me today. We're getting slightly, as we've moved on through the lessons, we're now reading bigger and bigger chunks of the text. But I don't want you to panic. Remember, you can pause this video at any time, rewind it, listen to me reading parts again, or just stop, listen to me read, because eventually this is going to help you when you come to read your parts of the text for yourself. Okay, who can remember, pause the video, we had a few hints and tips from last lesson. Can anyone remember what any of those were? Just pause the video and have a think for a moment. Oh, some of them are a bit tricky. Remember, we talked about confidence, and sometimes we feel really nervous inside, but actually we are going to pretend that we're the best readers in the world and that we are ready to do this. We're going to always remember to vary the pace that we read at. It gets really boring to hear somebody speak at the same speed all of the time. So make sure you change the speed and the pace, and also change the volume of your voice. You might want to whisper at times or even shout. And again, particularly when there's speech, and we know that it's speech because there's inverted commas around phrases or parts of words, sentences. This tells us someone's talking, and you might want to read these parts in different voices or with more expression. Remember to look out for those key words though. So any words that tell us anyone's emotions, feelings, or how quickly they might be running, walking, jumping, if they're excited, sad, lonely. These are all clues to help you to read, to help you to know what expression to use while you're reading the text. It's really important that we start to pick up on those clues. Okay, so we're going to finish reading the story today. I'm actually going to start from the very, very beginning. If you go to your folder for today's lesson, you will be able to find the text for the Little Hippo. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to pause the video, go and find the story, open it up, come back, unpause me, and then go back to the text and follow the pages as I read with you. I want you to use your finger and follow every single word. If you're feeling really confident, you might be ready to read along with me. If you can't manage all of it, don't worry. I'd be really, really proud and glad to see any of you having a go. Okay, so pause the video, go to the lessons and learning for today, find the text, open it, come back, unpause me, and then go back to the text and get ready. Off you go. Okay, so hopefully you have found the text on our learning page for today. And now I'd like you to get your fingers ready. We're going to go from the very first page where the story begins up until the last page that we looked at last lesson. In fact, I'm going to go on and read the last page with you. We're going to complete the actual story. So you need to get ready. Here we go. This story begins in ancient Egypt during the happy age of blue hippos. At that time, if you gazed at the watery marshes that lined the cities, you could see the hippos' backs curled up along the horizon. As the good masters of the River Nile, the blue hippos basked in the tranquil waters. All around them bloomed flowers, and as time went by, the river's many plants left a mark on their sunbathed skin. Fish would brush against them, butterflies would land on them, and birds pecked at them without fear at these strange turquoise creatures. One day, the youngest amongst them, the one they called Little Hippo, became the friend of Anteath, a tall old man with white hair. Every night, side by side, Anteath and Little Hippo would admire the setting sun. The sun dies each day to be reborn each morning, the old man would say. Soon I too will fall asleep just like them. Then a long journey will begin. When Antif left for this unknown kingdom, and when he was laid down below the ground, little Hippo lay down beside him and fell into a deep slumber. Time went by, days, months, centuries. Hidden deep inside their tomb, Antif and little Hippo seemed to be forgotten. Then one bright morning, at the first light of dawn, shovels began to dig through the earth. Hands began to search slowly through everything. One by one, the diggers removed a multitude of objects, each one more precious than the other. All this commotion woke up little Hippo, who became frightened and hid beneath a stone. It was only then that he noticed his size. Instead of growing all of these years, he had been getting smaller and smaller. As soon as he got a chance, little Hippo slipped out into the open. Nothing looked the same outside. The city had vanished into thin air, and in the river, the blue hippos had disappeared. Where were his brothers, his friends, and his parents? There was not even a single flower growing anywhere. Not a single bird flying in the sky. Wind and time had taken them all. I need to find my own kind, thought little Hippo. Perhaps they've left for distant lands, the one which Antif so often mentioned. And so he began his journey, a minuscule blue spot in the big golden desert. He scampered for days. The more he walked, the more sand stuck to his skin, covering the beautiful turquoise colour of his back. Soon he began to shine as brightly as the sun. Little by little, underneath his feet, clay began to replace the warm sand of the desert. Houses lined the road here and there, and when the wind blew clay dust onto his body, little Hippo took the appearance of a setting sun. In the distance, a forest appeared. Little Hippo was so happy to see the trees and plants again. He rolled around in the leaves and ate them with delight. When he came out, he was as green as a prairie. That's a new word. You might want to have a think about that. We'll talk about that later. What is a prairie? Still, little Hippo kept walking and walking for what seemed like an eternity. At last he saw tall silhouettes on the horizon. A thick fog floated in the air, heavy with dust and smoke. Exhausted, little Hippo lay down and he fell asleep. When he woke up, he looked just as grey as a mouse. Little Hippo sighed. He'd been travelling for so long, he would never find his ancestors. When he caught sight of the water flowing gently in a meandering river, he slipped into it and began to cry. But all of a sudden, as the current washed over his small round back, he saw them. His parents, his brothers, his friends. They were all waiting for him in a pyramid made of glass. Filled with joy, little Hippo ran up to join them with all the strength that his little legs would allow. So it's the last page, guys, the one we have not read together yet. Ever since that day, little Hippo has slept blissfully beside his family and friends. Meanwhile, around the earth, all hippos bathe tirelessly in the hope that one day they'll recover the beautiful turquoise colour they once had. Okay, so that's the end of the actual story. We will be looking a little bit more deeply into those back pages later on this week. So if you could just pause the video, come back now to the lesson, and we'll continue. Fantastic reading. I hope that all of you had a go at following the text and reading out loud with me. We've read the story so many times now that you should start to be feeling really confident that you recognise the words, the phrases, the tricky words on the page and even are beginning to understand some of their meanings. So that's the whole story complete. Now I'd like you to retell the story of the little hippo. So I'd like you to perform it. I'd like you to go and say, there was once this little hippo, okay, at the very beginning of time, before the Egyptian people that used to dwell and bask in the waters of the River Nile. And then move on to the next important point. These happy hippos, one day, one of them called Little Hippo met Antif, an Egyptian, an old Egyptian man. They became very good friends. So do you see how I'm just using what I know of the story to pick up those key events? Remember, it needs to be told in chronological order. So as you, my challenge for you is to use some of the words that you've picked out from the text as we've been learning about it. We've been doing this for 2 weeks now. So you should have a good idea of some of the words. For example, you might say, the hippos basked in the River Nile at the very beginning of time. That could be your starting point. That was the beginning of the story. So how many of the words, the tricky words from the text, can you include as you retell the story to somebody and show off what you know? Once you've done that, so pause the video if you're not quite finished, you have got a worksheet for today. It has got a story map on it, and you have been given some of the key or the most important, the most significant events that happened in the story. You are going to read them first, okay? You might need a little bit of help with that. I want you to have a really good go because there's lots of words in there now that you should be recognizing, like little, hippo, did, not, how, and, saw. So I want you to have a really good go at trying to read each text box yourself. If you need help, then please ask. Once you've read them all, you need to number them because you're going to then cut them out and place them along your story map. I'd like you to do this in your books. If you're at home, please use the task sheet that's available for you. Okay, off you go. Pause the video, have a go at doing that activity. And on the next slide, I'm going to give you the answers, but please do not cheat. Okay, so it's now time to mark your work. If you have made any errors or mistakes, in green editing pen or with a different coloured pen or pencil at home, please can you reorder them underneath? So just write the number underneath each box if you've made any mistakes. But I don't think you will have done because you know the story so well by now. Great work, Year 4. Next lesson, we're going to be looking a little bit more deeply into what we can tell about the Egyptians from what we've read. Fantastic work, and I will see you in our next lesson. Take care.